Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe for more updates. The lawyer's voice crackled through my phone speaker at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Ms. Claire Bennett, I'm calling about your grandmother's estate. I sat up in bed, my heart suddenly pounding. Grandma Evelyn had passed 3 weeks ago, and I'd been dreading this call. Not because of grief, though I missed her terribly, but because I knew my family. The reading is Friday at 2 p.m., he continued. Your presence is required. I thanked him and hung up. My hands were shaking. Grandma Evelyn had raised me from age 12 after my parents died in a car accident. She'd worked 2 jobs to keep me fed, clothed, and loved. She'd paid for my college. She'd been my whole world. But her son, my Uncle Warren, had always resented me. He believed his mother wasted money on an orphan when she should have been helping him and his perfect son, my cousin Blake. I knew Uncle Warren would fight for every penny. What I didn't know was how far he'd already gone. Friday came cold and gray. I drove to the law office in downtown Portland, my stomach tight with anxiety. I wore my best black dress, the one Grandma bought me for job interviews. Inside the waiting room, Uncle Warren sat with Blake beside him. Warren was 52, thick around the middle, with thinning hair he combed over aggressively. Blake was 26, 2 years younger than me, with styled hair and designer sneakers that probably cost more than my rent. They didn't acknowledge me when I walked in. Blake was scrolling through his phone, laughing at something. Warren stared straight ahead, jaw set like concrete. The secretary called us in. The lawyer, Mr. Hoffman, was older, gray-haired, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He gestured for us to sit. The office smelled like old books and coffee. Mr. Hoffman opened a folder and cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. We're here to execute the last will and testament of Evelyn Marie Bennett. Mr. Hoffman read through the preliminary sections. Standard legal language about sound mind and body. Then he got to the assets. The estate consists primarily of the family home, valued at approximately $480,000, and liquid assets totaling to $190,000. My breath caught. I'd had no idea Grandma had saved so much. She'd lived so simply, buying store-brand groceries and mending her own clothes. Warren leaned forward, eyes bright with greed. Blake stopped looking at his phone. Mr. Hoffman continued. To my beloved granddaughter, Claire Bennett, I leave my personal effects, photographs, and jewelry. My chest tightened. That was it. Just things. The remainder of my estate, including the house and all financial assets, I leave to my grandson, Blake Warren Bennett, with the hope that he will use these resources to build a stable and productive life. The room spun. I heard the words, but they didn't make sense. Blake let out a small laugh, quickly covered. Warren's face split into a satisfied smile. I sat frozen, unable to process what I just heard. Grandma left everything to Blake. Blake, who hadn't visited her in 3 years. Blake, who forgot her birthday every year and only called when he needed money. Mr. Hoffman was still talking, something about probate timelines and documentation, but his voice sounded distant, like I was underwater. Warren stood up, shaking Mr. Hoffman's hand with both of his. Thank you. This is what Mother wanted. Family taking care of family. He glanced at me, and for just a moment, I saw something cold and triumphant in his eyes. Blake was already texting someone, probably his friends, probably bragging. They left the office together, laughing about something. I stayed in my chair. Mr. Hoffman looked at me with what seemed like pity. I'm sorry, Miss Bennett. I know this must be difficult. I managed to nod. My throat was too tight to speak. I stood on shaky legs and walked out into the gray afternoon. I drove home in a daze. My apartment was small, a studio on the east side of Portland where the rent was barely affordable. I worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm. The pay was decent, but I was still paying off student loans. I'd counted on Grandma's inheritance not because I was greedy, but because I'd assumed she'd want to take care of me the way she always had. I collapsed onto my couch and stared at the ceiling. Had I misunderstood our relationship? Had she resented raising me? Maybe Warren had convinced her I didn't need help because I had a job and Blake was struggling. Blake had dropped out of college twice and bounced between jobs his whole adult life. Maybe Grandma thought tough love would hurt me less than it would hurt him. I tried to cry, but nothing came. I just felt hollow. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the lawyer's words. Then, around 2 a.m., something shifted in my mind, a detail. Something Mr. Hoffman had said the next morning. I called the law office. Mr. Hoffman's secretary answered. "I'd like to request a copy of the will," I said. "Just for my records." There was a pause. "Of course, Ms. Bennett, we can mail that to you." 3 days later, a thick envelope arrived. I sat at my kitchen table and read through every page. The legal language was dense, but I understood enough. The will had been revised 6 months before Grandma's death. Before that, the estate had been split evenly between Blake and me. But this new version changed everything. At the bottom of the final page was Grandma's signature. It looked like hers, but something about it felt wrong. The letters were shaky, uneven. Grandma had beautiful handwriting, even in her 80s. Her hands were steady from years of sewing and gardening. This signature looked like someone had traced it while their hand trembled. I took out my phone and searched for the last birthday card Grandma had sent me. Her signature was smooth and confident. I laid them side by side. I took photos of both signatures and sent them to my best friend, Naomi, who worked as a paralegal. She called me within an hour. "Claire, these don't match. Look at the pressure on the pen strokes. The slant. This new one looks forced." My stomach dropped. "You think someone forged it?" Naomi hesitated. "I think you need a professional opinion, a handwriting analyst, and maybe a lawyer." I couldn't afford either. But Naomi knew someone who owed her a favor. By the end of the week, I was sitting across from a forensic document examiner named Dr. Iris Caldwell. She was in her 60s, precise and serious. She studied both signatures under a magnified light for a long time. Finally, she looked up. "This is a forgery." Not a very good one either. Whoever did this tried to copy the original but couldn't replicate the natural flow. "See here." She pointed to the letter in Evelyn. "The hesitation marks. The tremor isn't from age. It's from uncertainty." My hands clenched into fists. What do I do? Dr. Caldwell gave me a written report. Naomi helped me find a lawyer willing to take the case on contingency. Her name was Ms. Patricia Flores, sharp-eyed and no nonsense. She read through everything, then looked at me. "This is fraud, potentially criminal. But we need more than a handwriting analysis. We need to prove who did it and why." I thought about Uncle Warren's smile in that office, about how quickly he'd moved to take control. How do we prove it? I asked. Ms. Flores leaned back in her chair. "We let them think they've won. We watch what they do with the money. Fraudsters always make mistakes when they feel safe." She explained the strategy. "We'd file a quiet challenge to the will, but not publicly. We'd let Blake take possession of the inheritance. Let him spend it. Let him brag. And we'd document everything. It's risky," she warned. "If we can't prove it in court, you lose everything." I thought about Grandma, about the way she'd hug me before bed every night when I was young. Let's do it. Blake took control of the estate within 2 weeks. The house, the money, all of it. I watched from a distance, using social media like a window into his world. He didn't disappoint. The first thing he posted was a photo of himself standing in front of Grandma's house with the caption, "New property owner. Blessed and grateful, blessed." The word made my blood boil. Within a month, he'd started renovations. He posted photos of workers tearing out Grandma's kitchen, the one where she taught me to bake. He replaced it with modern cabinets and marble countertops. He tore up her garden, the one she tended for 40 years, and poured concrete for a basketball court. Every post was another knife in my chest. But I didn't comment. I didn't react. I just saved screenshots and sent them to Miss Flores. Good, she said. Let him keep going. Blake didn't stop at the house. He bought a new truck, a lifted red Dodge with custom rims. He posted photos of himself at expensive restaurants, bottles of champagne on the table. 2 months in, Blake's spending got even more reckless. He took a trip to Las Vegas with his friends, posting photos from nightclub VIP sections and casino floors. He bought a jet ski. He got a tattoo that covered half his back, some kind of elaborate dragon design, and posted shirtless photos showing it off. Got the funds to live my truth now. One caption read, I wanted to scream. That money was supposed to honor Grandma's memory. Instead, he was burning through it like it was nothing. But I stayed silent. At work, I kept my head down. My coworkers knew Grandma had passed, but I didn't talk about the will. I didn't want anyone to know what was happening until I had proof. At night, I'd sit in my apartment reviewing documents. Miss Flores had subpoenaed Grandma's medical records, bank statements, and communication logs. We were building a case slowly, carefully. One night, Naomi called. I found something. Your uncle visited Grandma's house the day before she went into the hospital for the last time. Naomi had pulled visitor logs from the nursing care facility where Grandma spent her final weeks. Warren had signed in twice in 1 week, both times when I was at work and couldn't visit. On the security footage Ms. Flores requested, Warren was seen leaving with a folder under his arm. What was in that folder? I asked. Ms. Flores smiled grimly. We're going to find out. She filed a motion to depose Warren and Blake. The court date was set for 3 months out. That meant 3 more months of watching Blake waste Grandma's money. 3 more months of pretending I didn't know the truth. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Blake started talking about buying a boat. He posted photos at the dealership, sitting on a cabin cruiser that cost $60,000. My hands shook as I saved the screenshot. How much was left? How much of Grandma's life savings would be gone by the time we got to court? Ms. Flores reminded me to trust the process. The more he spends, the worse he looks. Judges don't like people who squander estates. For months after the will reading, Blake threw a massive party at Grandma's house. He rented a DJ, brought in catering, and invited what looked like 100 people. He posted videos of people dancing in the living room where Grandma used to sit and read to me. He posted photos of strangers drinking on the porch where she taught me to shell peas. In one video, someone spilled red wine on the carpet. Blake just laughed. I watched it alone in my apartment, crying for the first time since the funeral. Not for the money, for the disrespect, for the erasure of everything Grandma had been. The next day, I got a call from Ms. Flores. The deposition is in 2 weeks. Are you ready? I wiped my face and steadied my voice. Yes, she warned me it would be hard. Warren and Blake would lie. They tried to make me look bitter and jealous. I had to stay calm no matter what they said. I practiced in the mirror every night. Calm face, steady voice. Let the evidence speak. The deposition took place in a conference room downtown. Warren and Blake sat across from me with their lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit named Mr. Kramer. Ms. Flores sat beside me, calm and prepared. Mr. Kramer started with Warren. Mr. Bennett, can you describe your relationship with your mother in her final years? Warren leaned back, playing the grieving son. We were very close. I visited her weekly. I handled her finances when she got too sick to manage them herself. Ms. Flores didn't blink. And during these visits, did you ever discuss her will? Warren shifted, of course. She wanted to make sure Blake was taken care of. Claire had a good job, a stable life. Blake needed the help more. Ms. Flores slid a document across the table. This is a bank statement showing a $15,000 withdrawal from Mrs. Bennett's account 3 weeks before her death. Can you explain that? Warren's face went red. That was for medical expenses already covered by Medicare. Warren's lawyer jumped in, objecting, but the damage was done. Ms. Flores turned to Blake. Mr. Bennett, How much of the inheritance have you spent so far? Blake shrugged, cocky. I don't know. I'm not keeping a ledger. It's my money. Miss Flores pulled out a folder thick with printed screenshots. According to your own social media posts, you've spent approximately $175,000 in for months. On a truck, a jet ski, vacations, parties, and a boat you haven't even taken out of the marina. Blake's smirk faded. So it's mine to spend. Except it wasn't yours, Miss Flores said quietly. She slid the forensic report across the table. This will was forged. The signature is fake. Your father manipulated a dying woman's estate, and you've been spending money that was never legally yours. The room went silent. Warren's face turned white. Blake looked at his father, confused and panicking. Mr. Kramer tried to recover, calling it speculation and demanding proof. Miss Flores had it. All of it. Security footage, bank records, testimony from Grandma's nurse who confirmed Warren had been alone with her papers. The court hearing was set for 3 weeks later. In that time, Blake's social media went dark. No more posts about his truck or his boat or his renovations. Warren hired a better lawyer. They were scrambling. Miss Flores warned me they'd try to settle. They'll offer you a portion to make this go away quietly. Don't take it unless I say so. I wasn't interested in settling. I wanted the truth on record. I wanted a judge to say out loud that they'd stolen from my grandmother. The day of the hearing, I wore the same black dress. I sat in the courtroom, hands folded, while the judge reviewed the evidence. Warren and Blake sat on the other side, not looking at me. The judge, an older woman named Judge Callahan, read through everything methodically. Finally, she looked up. This is one of the most blatant cases of estate fraud I've seen in 20 years on the bench. Warren tried to speak. Judge Callahan cut him off. You will have your turn, Mr. Bennett. Right now, I'm talking. Judge Callahan's voice was sharp and steady. The forensic evidence is clear. The will dated 6 months before Mrs. Bennett's death is a forgery. The original will, splitting the estate evenly between Blake Bennett and Claire Bennett, remains the valid document. Blake slumped in his chair. Warren's jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. The judge continued. Furthermore, Mr. Warren Bennett, you are hereby ordered to account for every dollar removed from your mother's accounts in the 6 months preceding her death. Any funds not justified by legitimate expenses will be returned to the estate. Warren's lawyer tried to argue. Judge Callahan raised her hand. I'm not finished. Blake Bennett, you've spent a significant portion of an estate you had no legal right to. You will repay every dollar with interest. Blake's face went pale. I don't have it. It's gone. The judge's expression didn't change. Then you'll sell your assets. The truck, the jet ski, the boat. The renovations you made to the house will be undone at your expense. The judge turned to me. Miss Bennett, I'm sorry for what you've endured. Your grandmother's intentions have been restored. You are entitled to half the estate as originally specified. I nodded, unable to speak. My throat was too tight. Judge Callahan wasn't done. I'm also referring this matter to the district attorney's office. Estate fraud is a felony. Mr. Warren Bennett, you should expect criminal charges. Warren stood up, shouting, This is insane. I was helping my mother. Claire didn't care about her. Judge Callahan's gavel came down hard. Mr. Bennett, sit down, or I'll hold you in contempt. Security moved toward him. Warren sat, shaking with rage. The judge scheduled a follow-up hearing to assess repayment and signed an order freezing all remaining estate assets. As we left the courtroom, Blake tried to approach me. Claire, please. I didn't know. My dad said it was all legal. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He wasn't lying. He'd been stupid and greedy, but he hadn't forged the will. Warren had. You spent the money anyway, I said quietly. You didn't ask questions because you didn't want answers. The next 2 months were a blur of paperwork and court-ordered asset sales. Blake's truck sold first, at a loss because he'd driven it hard. The jet ski went next. The boat sat in the marina for weeks before a beer came through. The basketball court at Grandma's house was jackhammered up. The renovations were reversed as much as possible. Blake moved back in with Warren. Neither of them spoke to me. Warren was formally charged with forgery and theft. He pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence, 3 years probation, restitution, and community service. He lost his contractor's license. His business collapsed that Blake got a job at a warehouse. His social media stayed dark. No more champagne bottles. No more parties. Just silence. The estate was finally settled 6 months after that first court hearing. After legal fees and repayments, I received $140,000 and half ownership of Grandma's house. Blake got the other half, but he couldn't afford to keep it. He agreed to sell. We split the proceeds. I used part of the money to pay off my student loans. The rest went into savings and a small investment account. I didn't buy a new car or take a vacation. I didn't post about it online. I just lived my life quietly and carefully, the way Grandma had taught me. One Saturday afternoon, I drove out to Grandma's house before the new owners took possession. I walked through the empty rooms, remembering. The kitchen where we'd baked cookies, the porch where she told me stories, the bedroom where she tucked me in every night for 6 years. I cried then. Not angry tears, sad ones, grateful ones. In the hallway closet, I found something the cleaners had missed. A shoebox tucked on the top shelf. Inside were letters. Dozens of them, written in Grandma's handwriting. They were addressed to me, dated over the years, but never sent. I sat on the floor and read them. They were full of love and pride. Claire, you've become such a strong young woman. I'm so proud of the life you're building. One letter, dated a month before she died, said, if anything happens to me, don't let Warren bully you. You're stronger than you know. I took the letters home and kept them in a drawer beside my bed. On hard days, I'd read one. They reminded me that Grandma had always seen me clearly, that she'd known exactly who I was and what I was capable of. At work, I got a promotion. My boss praised my attention to detail and my calm under pressure. I didn't tell her I'd learned those skills fighting for my inheritance. Naomi threw me a small party to celebrate. Just the two of us, pizza and cheap wine in my apartment. You did it, she said, raising her glass. You fought and you won. I clinked my glass against hers. Grandma fought. I just didn't give up. 6 months later, I moved into a better apartment. Nothing fancy, but it had a bedroom and a small balcony. I bought a tomato plant for the balcony and tended it the way Grandma had tended her garden. It felt like keeping her alive in some small way. I didn't hear from Blake or Warren. They disappeared from my life completely. I was fine with that. A year after the court case, I got a message on social media from someone I didn't know. The profile picture showed a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. Hi, Claire. My name is Helen. I was your grandmother's neighbor for 15 years. I heard about what happened with the will. I wanted you to know that Evelyn talked about you constantly. She was so proud of you. She showed me every photo you sent her. She loved you more than anything. I wrote back immediately, thanking her. Helen replied, Warren tried to keep you away from her near the end. He told the nurses you were too busy to visit. But Evelyn knew. She told me once, Warren thinks I'm a fool, but I see him. I wish I'd done more to help. I assured her it wasn't her fault. But the message confirmed what I'd suspected. Warren had isolated Grandma, controlled her information, and manipulated her vulnerability. It made the forgery even more sickening. Still, I didn't let it pull me back into anger. The case was over. Justice had been served. 2 years after Grandma's death, I was living a life I was proud of. I'd been promoted again at work. I'd started volunteering at a literacy center, teaching adults to read. I'd even started dating someone, a quiet, thoughtful man named Adrian who worked as a librarian. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. One evening, Adrian and I were cooking dinner in my apartment when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Miss Bennett. This is Officer Denise Ruiz with Portland PD. I'm calling about Warren Bennett. My stomach dropped. What happened? She explained that Warren had been arrested again. He tried to forge documents to take out a loan against property he didn't own. He's facing serious charges this time. I'm calling because he listed you as next of kin. I almost laughed. I'm not his next of kin. Blake is his son. Blake refused to be listed, the officer said. Do you want to be notified of court dates? I thought about it. Then I said, no, I'm done with that family. I hung up and told Adrian what happened. He shook his head. Some people never learn. I stirred the pasta, thinking about Warren, about how greed had destroyed him, about how he'd thrown away his relationship with his mother, his son, and any chance at redemption. I felt sorry for him. Not enough to help, but enough to recognize the tragedy. That night, I pulled out one of Grandma's letters. This one was dated 3 years before her death. Clear, I've made mistakes as a mother. I enabled Warren too long. I didn't set boundaries. I hope I've done better with you. I hope I've shown you that love isn't about money. It's about showing up, being honest, and doing the hard things when they matter. I folded the letter carefully and put it back. Grandma had shown me all of that. She'd shown me how to fight for what was right, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. I didn't need an inheritance to know she loved me. But I'd fought for it anyway, not for the money, but for the truth. 3 years after everything started, I was sitting in a coffee shop with Naomi, catching up. She'd just gotten engaged. I was genuinely happy for her. Remember when you called me about those signatures? She said, laughing. I thought you were being paranoid. I smiled. I thought I was too. Until I wasn't. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're the toughest person I know, Claire. Grandma would be proud. I believe that. Not because I'd won money, but because I'd stood up. Because I trusted myself when everyone else told me to let it go. On my way home, I stopped by the cemetery. I hadn't been in months, but today felt right. I knelt by Grandma's headstone and traced her name with my fingers. I got the letters. I said out loud, thank you for everything, for raising me, for teaching me, for fighting for me even when you couldn't do it out loud. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves. It felt like an answer. I stood, brushed the dirt off my knees, and walked back to my car. Life was good. Not perfect, but good. And I built it myself. 5 years after Grandma's death, I bought my first house. It was small, a 2-bedroom bungalow with a yard big enough for a garden. I planted tomatoes, peppers, and flowers. I thought about Grandma every time I watered them. Adrian and I got married in that garden. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and Naomi as my maid of honor. No family from my father's side. I didn't miss them. At night, I'd sit on my back porch and think about how close I'd come to losing everything. If I'd accepted the will without question, if I'd let Warren and Blake get away with it, if I'd listened to people who said fighting wasn't worth it, but I hadn't, I'd trusted my gut. I'd let Blake spend the money, watched him make a fool of himself, and waited for the right moment. And when that moment came, I'd been ready. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was proof that truth matters, that patience wins, that quiet people finish things. Grandma taught me that, and I'd never forget it.